While sorting through my late father's financial records, I stumbled across a hidden bank account containing over $2 million. At first, I thought he'd been quietly saving, but then I found a trail of suspicious withdrawals that revealed he'd been paying off a blackmailer for 15 years, hiding a secret none of us could have imagined. I was never meant to uncover it. My father had been hospitalized for 3 weeks following his cardiac event, and my mother requested I manage his financial affairs during his recovery. I'd always known him as a meticulous individual, someone who balanced every cent, clipped coupons diligently, and constantly reminded us to conserve electricity by turning off lights. So, when I accessed his bank account and discovered $2,347,914.42 residing in a savings account I'd never encountered, a knot formed in my stomach. Yet, it wasn't the sum of money that caused my hands to tremble. It was the record of withdrawals. Each month for the past 15 years, with unwavering regularity, $8,000 would depart, always on the third Thursday, always destined for the identical account number, always bearing the same description: monthly consulting fee. I scrolled through years of transactions. The payments commenced in March 2009, immediately following my younger brother's tragic death in that car collision. This was the very month our family fractured. My father had consistently informed us that the insurance payout was minimal, just enough to cover funeral expenses and a modest college fund for me. We maintained a humble lifestyle, driving older vehicles and frequenting secondhand shops. I held down 2 jobs throughout college because my father claimed funds were limited. Meanwhile, he had been sitting on more than $2 million and consistently paying someone $8,000 monthly for consulting. I contacted the bank. After assuring them of my authorization on the account, the representative corroborated what I already suspected: automated monthly transfers to AM Holdings LLC. No further specifics were available. That evening, I confronted my mother. She was washing dishes when I carefully placed the bank statements on the kitchen counter. "What is this?" I inquired. Her complexion drained of color. The plate she held slipped from her grasp and shattered on the floor. She gazed at the broken fragments as if they mirrored our shattered family. "Where did you obtain these?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Dad has been paying someone $8,000 a month for 15 years, the same 15 years since Brian passed away. What truly happened that night, Mom?" She slumped into a chair, suddenly appearing decades older. Her hands quivered as she reached for the documents. "Your father was not supposed to drive that night," she revealed. "He had been drinking at his company's holiday gathering. I pleaded with him to hail a cab. I practically knelt before him. My blood ran cold." "Mom, what are you implying?" "Brian was eager to attend that midnight movie premiere. Your father insisted on driving him and his companions." Her voice faltered. "The police report stated the other driver disregarded a red light, striking them head-on." I felt a wave of nausea. "But that's not the accurate account, is it?" She looked at me with vacant eyes that had witnessed too much sorrow. "The other driver, Alex Morrison, wasn't meant to be there either. He was escaping something that night, something your father was aware of." "What did Dad know?" My mother slowly rose, walked to our antique filing cabinet, and retrieved a manila folder I had never seen. Her hands trembled as she extended it to me. Inside were photographs, bank records, police reports with redacted sections, and a letter typed on law firm stationery. The letter was dated 1 week after Brian's funeral. It was addressed to my father and bore the signature of someone named Adrian Morrison. "Mr. Patterson," it read, "as previously discussed, my client is prepared to maintain discretion regarding the events of December 18th, 2009, in exchange for the agreed-upon monthly consideration. Any deviation from this arrangement will result in the immediate disclosure of all pertinent materials to the appropriate authorities." I stared at the signature. "Morrison, like the other driver?" My mother nodded, her face etched with 15 years of suppressed anguish. "His sister, she's an attorney." "Mom, what is she referring to? What silence? What materials?" My mother closed her eyes as if the very words caused her physical pain to utter. "Alex Morrison was fleeing a hit-and-run incident when he collided with your brother's vehicle. He had just fatally struck a pedestrian downtown and was rushing to dispose of the evidence." "So why was Dad being blackmailed?" "Because," she whispered, "your father witnessed it." The room began to spin. "What?" "Your father was walking back to his car after the Christmas party. He observed Alex Morrison strike that pedestrian, saw him accelerate away without stopping. Your father obtained the license plate number, even captured a photograph with his phone. Then why didn't he contact the police immediately?" My mother's voice completely fractured. "He attempted to, but by the time he retrieved his phone and began dialing, Alex had already crashed into Brian's car 6 blocks away. Your father had to make a choice: provide his statement about the hit and run or rush to save his own son." I felt as though I might vomit. He chose Brian, but Brian was already gone, my mother said, tears streaming down her face. The impact killed him instantly along with his two companions, Tommy Rodriguez and Michael Kim. Your father performed CPR until paramedics arrived, but it was too late. All three boys perished at the scene, and Alex Morrison was unconscious, barely clinging to life, trapped in his vehicle. The name struck me like blows. Tommy and Michael had been Brian's closest friends since elementary school. I recalled their funerals, their heartbroken parents, the collective grief of our entire community. So, Dad never disclosed what he saw? Not initially. He was in shock, consumed by sorrow. The police questioned him about the accident, but he only spoke of Brian's crash. He stated he would address what he witnessed downtown later, after the funeral, after we had time to process the loss of our son. I looked back at the photographs in the folder. Traffic camera stills showing my father's car in the downtown area. Timestamps proving his presence when the pedestrian was struck. Screenshots from his phone displaying the image he'd captured of Morrison's license plate. But then, Adrienne Morrison appeared at our house the day after Brian's funeral, my mother continued. She had done her research. She knew your father had attended that Christmas party, knew he had been drinking, knew he had driven Brian and his friends home afterward. The pieces began to align, and I felt ill. She possessed evidence that your father was driving under the influence that night, my mother stated. Security footage from the restaurant parking lot depicting him stumbling to his car. Breathalyzer results from the hospital after the accident indicating his blood alcohol content was 0.09, just above the legal limit. She asserted that if he reported Alex's actions, she would ensure everyone knew your father was the true culprit, a drunk driver who had murdered his own son and two innocent children. The words hit me like physical impacts. But that's not accurate. The other driver disregarded the red light. It makes no difference, my mother said. She had lawyers, money, connections. She convinced your father that no one would believe him, that even if they did, he would still face charges of vehicular manslaughter for operating a vehicle while intoxicated with minors inside. She painted a grim picture of our future. Your father in prison, our family shattered, you growing up believing your dad killed your brother. I considered all the years my father couldn't meet my gaze when we spoke of Brian. How he would exit the room whenever the accident was mentioned. How he had begun drinking more, staying late at the office, vanishing for hours without explanation. The way he had aged 10 years in the months following Brian's death. So, Alex Morrison escaped justice for murder? My mother nodded. The pedestrian he killed was a homeless man named David Chun, a 42-year-old veteran with PTSD who had been living on the streets since his discharge from Afghanistan. He had been striving to get clean, attending AA meetings, staying at the downtown shelter. No family to speak on his behalf, no one to champion for justice. The case grew cold within weeks, and Dad has been paying to keep quiet about witnessing it. Adrienne Morrison made it unequivocally clear that if the payments ceased, she would release everything. The traffic camera footage, the restaurant security video, medical records displaying my father's blood alcohol level from the hospital that night, testimony regarding his erratic behavior in the weeks after the accident. She threatened to ruin our family's reputation and ensure my father went to prison for vehicular manslaughter. A fury I had never before experienced began to well up inside me. So, we lived in poverty while this woman enriched herself from Brian's death? Your father intended to tell you the truth when you turned 18, then when you completed college, then when you became engaged. But each time he tried, he would envision you despising him for choosing to protect himself instead of securing justice for a stranger. He was terrified you would view him as he viewed himself, a coward who let a killer go free to save his own skin. The weight of it all was overwhelming. 15 years of guilt, shame, and financial burden. All because one woman decided to profit from a tragedy. What about the insurance money? The settlement? My mother laughed bitterly. There was no settlement. The insurance company contested us at every turn, claiming your father's drinking contributed to the accident. We received $50,000 in total, barely enough to cover the funeral costs for 3 boys. Everything else, every penny we subsisted on, came from your father's salary and that clandestine account. Where did the $2 million originate? Your grandfather's life insurance policy. He passed away 6 months before Brian, leaving everything to your father. We had planned to use it to pay off the house, perhaps buy you a car for college. Instead, it became our life sentence. I spent the following week delving deeper into the investigation. I located articles about David Chun in the local newspaper, brief mentions of a homeless veteran discovered deceased on East Randolph Street, a hit-and-run driver never apprehended. There was a short interview with a social worker at the shelter who described him as quiet, kind, and diligently working to rebuild his life. David was one of our success stories, the social worker had remarked. He had been sober for 3 months, had a job interview scheduled for the following week. Such a senseless misfortune. I tracked down Detective Raymond Torres, the initial investigating officer on David Chen's case. He was retired now, residing in a small house on the south side, but his recollection of the case remained sharp. "Mr. Patterson," he said when I called, "I recall your family's tragedy, losing 3 boys in one night. I am sorry for your loss. Detective, I possess information regarding the David Chen case, the hit and run from December 18, 2009. There was a prolonged silence. "I'm listening." I recounted everything to him. My father's eyewitness account, Adrienne Morrison's blackmail scheme, the evidence she had concealed to shield her brother. When I finished, Detective Torres remained silent for a considerable moment. "Son, I have carried that case with me for 15 years. It was my inaugural year as lead detective, and I sensed something was amiss. The timing, the location, the way the investigation simply ceased. It never felt right to me. Can you reopen it with this evidence?" "Absolutely. The statute of limitations does not apply when new evidence surfaces, particularly for vehicular manslaughter. And this blackmail scheme, that constitutes extortion, tax evasion, obstruction of justice. We are looking at federal charges." He leaned back in his chair. "Your father has been bearing this burden for 15 years. Are you certain he is prepared for what comes next? The media attention, the investigation, the trial. Morrison will attack him with everything she possesses. He is dying," I stated. "The strain of guarding this secret has been slowly killing him. His heart attack was not his first. He has experienced 3 in the past 2 years. I believe he would rather face the repercussions than carry this guilt to his grave." Torres nodded. "Understood, but we must be strategic. Adrienne Morrison is influential, powerful. She has judges, prosecutors, politicians in her sway. If we are to bring her down, we must execute it correctly." He outlined a strategy. We would require recorded proof of Morrison admitting to the blackmail scheme. We would need to coordinate with the IRS and the district attorney's office. We would need to brace ourselves for Morrison to assault Dad's credibility, his character, his memory. "She has been evading accountability for 15 years, Torres remarked. "She will not yield quietly. She will attempt to destroy your father before she permits him to destroy her." The next step involved reaching out to David Chen's family. It took some diligent searching, but I located his sister, Maria, living in Sacramento. She was a social worker, married with 2 children, actively involved in veteran advocacy groups. When I telephoned her, she completely broke down. "I have been waiting 15 years to learn what happened to my brother," she said through tears. "I knew the police investigation was incomplete. David was cautious, intelligent. He would not have simply walked into traffic. Someone struck him and left him to die. I am sorry it took so long for the truth to emerge. Do not apologize. You are providing me with something the police never could, answers and justice." Maria flew out the following week. Meeting her was one of the most challenging experiences I had ever faced. She resembled David, the same gentle eyes, the same subtle smile. She brought photographs of him in his army uniform, letters he had written from Afghanistan, drawings he had created during his recovery at the VA hospital. David struggled with PTSD, but he was improving. She informed me as we sat in a coffee shop near the hospital. He had been clean for 3 months, had a job interview lined up at a construction company. He was discussing getting his own apartment, perhaps starting to date again. "I am so sorry for what my family's silence cost yours." Maria reached across the table and took my hand. "Your father was terrorized by a predator. Do not fault him for her transgressions." That afternoon, I escorted Maria to the hospital to meet Dad. He was propped up in bed, appearing frail but resolute. When I introduced them, he immediately began to weep. "I am so sorry," he said. "I failed your brother. I failed you. I allowed his killer to go free because I was a coward." Maria sat beside his bed. "Tell me about that night." For the next hour, Dad recounted everything he had witnessed. How he had seen Alex Morrison's car strike David. How he had watched Morrison speed away without stopping. How he had attempted to assist David but arrived too late. "I should have telephoned 911 immediately," Dad stated. "Instead, I called your mother, informed her of what I had seen, asked her what to do. While I was wasting time, Alex Morrison was colliding with my son's car." "You were in shock," Maria said gently. "You had just witnessed a horrific crime. No one thinks clearly in such moments. But if I had acted more swiftly, if I had made the call right away, perhaps the police could have intercepted Morrison before he reached Brian's car." Maria shook her head. "The police report indicates the crashes occurred only 6 minutes apart. There is no way they could have apprehended him in time. Your son's death was not your fault." Dad completely broke down. "I have been living with this guilt for 15 years. Every day, I wondered if Brian would still be alive if I had acted differently. He would not be, Maria stated firmly. Alex Morrison was inebriated, under the influence of cocaine, fleeing a crime scene. He was destined to crash into someone that night. The only distinction is that someone happened to be your son. Over the next few days, we prepared our legal case against Adrian Morrison. Detective Torres introduced me to Assistant District Attorney Helen Rodriguez, a formidable prosecutor who specialized in corruption cases. She was in her 50s, exceptionally sharp, with a reputation for bringing down influential defendants. This is a prosecutor's dream, Rodriguez declared after reviewing all the evidence. Clear proof of extortion, tax evasion, and obstruction of justice. Plus, she has been profiting from a murder cover-up for 15 years. No jury will have any sympathy for her. But Rodriguez also cautioned me about Morrison's probable defense strategy. She will contend that your father was the true criminal, that he was intoxicated, that he caused the accident, that he is attempting to deflect blame to avoid accountability. She will portray him as an unreliable witness with a motive to fabricate. But we have his photograph of Morrison's license plate time-stamped from that night, which she will claim could have been taken at any time. She will assert, your father pursued her brother to steal his identity, stage his own accident, conceal his own crimes. Rodriguez retrieved Morrison's file. She had been investigating her for years. Adrian Morrison is intelligent, ruthless, and well-connected. She has represented 3 judges, 2 city council members, and the mayor's chief of staff. She knows where all the secrets are buried in this city. So what is our approach? We target the financial offenses first: tax evasion, money laundering, crimes that do not require a jury to accept your father's account of that night. Once we have her on the federal charges, we leverage that to compel her confession to the extortion. The plan was intricate but essential. The IRS had been examining AM Holdings LLC for months, ever since I had provided the tip about the undeclared income. They traced the money through shell corporations, offshore accounts, fictitious business expenditures. She has been sophisticated about it, the IRS investigator informed us. But sophisticated criminals make sophisticated errors. She has 15 years of financial records that do not reconcile. While the federal case was progressing, Torres and I focused on accumulating evidence regarding the blackmail scheme. We interviewed the hospital staff who had treated Dad after Brian's accident, documenting his blood alcohol level and emotional state. We retrieved security footage from the restaurant where the Christmas party had been held. Most critically, we prepared to confront Morrison directly. The strategy was straightforward but hazardous. I would visit Morrison's office wearing a wire supplied by the district attorney's office. If I could induce her to admit to the blackmail scheme on tape, we would possess everything necessary for a conviction. Remember, Rodriguez coached me, you are not a law enforcement officer. You are a private citizen engaging in a conversation. Anything she says voluntarily is admissible in court. What if she becomes suspicious? She has been doing this for 15 years. She is arrogant, overconfident. In her mind, your family belongs to her. She will be unable to resist boasting. Torres fitted me with a wire, a minuscule recording device concealed within my shirt button. This apparatus will capture every word, he stated. Just get her talking and let her incriminate herself. On Thursday morning, I donned my finest suit and drove downtown to Morrison's law office. The building was sleek and contemporary, 30 floors of glass and steel financed by ill-gotten gains. Morrison's firm occupied the entire 28th floor. I would like to speak with Ms. Morrison about the Patterson account. I informed the receptionist, a young woman who appeared recently out of college. The receptionist's demeanor instantly shifted. She had clearly been briefed on how to handle anything pertaining to my family. One moment, please. She made a quick phone call, then guided me down a corridor adorned with accolades and photographs. Morrison's office was at the end, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Adrian Morrison was smaller than I had envisioned, yet she carried herself with the self-assurance of someone who had never encountered genuine repercussions. She was impeccably dressed in a designer suit, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her makeup flawless despite being almost 60. You must be Brian's brother, she stated without rising or offering to shake hands. I was apprised of your father's condition. A terrible thing, witnessing apparent decline. I trust the account transfer will proceed without interruption during his incapacitation. The casual manner in which she uttered Brian's name, as if he were merely an entry in her business ledger, made my blood boil. But I compelled myself to remain composed. Actually, I began, settling into the chair opposite her immense mahogany desk. I am here to discuss a revised arrangement. She leaned back in her leather chair, intertwining her perfectly manicured fingers. Oh, I was unaware our current arrangement possessed any flexibility. I produced a folder, not the genuine evidence, just copies designed to prompt her to speak. You see, while managing my father's finances during his illness, I have grown curious about the nature of your consulting work. 15 years is quite a substantial business relationship. Your services must be exceptionally valuable." Morrison smiled, the practiced smile of a predator who believed she was still in command. "Your father and I share what one might term a symbiotic relationship. I provide certain safeguards for your family's reputation and financial stability. In return, he compensates me appropriately for my discretion and expertise." The wire was capturing her every utterance. Protections from what, precisely? Her smile broadened, revealing perfectly capped teeth. "From the truth about what truly transpired the night your brother died. From the ramifications of your father's poor judgment and reckless conduct." "Which consequences would those be?" Morrison rose and walked to her window, gazing out at the city skyline like a monarch surveying her domain. "Criminal charges for vehicular manslaughter, civil liability for wrongful death, public humiliation when everyone learns that Robert Patterson killed his own son and 2 innocent children because he was too intoxicated and too arrogant to call a cab." I forced myself to maintain a steady voice. "But according to the police report, the other driver disregarded a red light." Morrison laughed, a cold, calculated sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Police reports can be incomplete, especially when certain witnesses opt not to come forward with pertinent information that might complicate the narrative." "What kind of information?" She turned back to face me, her eyes gleaming with sadistic pleasure. "Your father witnessed my brother Alex's unfortunate encounter with that homeless man earlier that evening. A tragic accident, truly. Alex was distraught, not thinking clearly after a dispute with his ex-wife. But instead of fulfilling his civic duty and reporting it immediately, your father chose to prioritize his own family's crisis. So you blackmailed him?" Morrison returned to her desk and sat down, her expression shifting to feigned concern. "I prefer to consider it offering him a choice. He could face the repercussions of his own criminal actions, driving while intoxicated with minors in his vehicle, failing to report a crime, obstruction of justice, or he could compensate me for my discretion and legal expertise." The admission was flawless, clear, unambiguous, recorded in high definition. "And if he had refused to pay?" Morrison shrugged as if discussing the weather. "Then everyone would have learned the truth about his drinking problem, about his negligence, about how his selfish decision to drive drunk resulted in the deaths of 3 children. His reputation would have been destroyed, his career ruined, his freedom forfeited for 15 years. As long as necessary. Your father took something from my family that night. My brother's future, his cognitive abilities, his chance at a normal life. Fair compensation seemed appropriate. Even though your brother killed someone?" Morrison's facade slipped for a brief moment, revealing the cold calculation beneath. "Alex made a misstep. A momentary lapse in judgment. Your father made a choice to prioritize his own interests over justice. There is a distinction." I slowly stood. "That's intriguing, because I have been recording this entire conversation." Her face transitioned from confident to bewildered to terrified in the span of 3 seconds. "You cannot. That is unlawful." "Actually, it is not. In Illinois, only one party needs to consent to recording. I consented. I retrieved my phone and halted the recording application, though the actual wire continued to run. 16 minutes of you admitting to 15 years of extortion, tax evasion, and obstruction of justice. The district attorney is going to be delighted by this." Morrison lunged for her desk phone, but I was already moving towards the door. "Oh, and Adrian, the homeless man your brother killed, David Chun, was a veteran who completed 2 tours in Afghanistan. He possessed a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star. The veteran community looks after its own, and they have been searching for his killer for 15 years. I paused at the door and turned back. "Detective Raymond Torres sends his regards." He never forgot about David Chun. Neither did his sister, Maria, who is flying in from California to finally obtain justice for her brother. Morrison's face had turned from white to green. "This is entrapment. You cannot utilize this recording." "I can and I will. You have approximately 30 minutes before the police arrive with arrest warrants. I suggest you contact your lawyer." I exited her office and took the elevator down to the lobby where Detective Torres and 2 FBI agents awaited. "How did it proceed?" Torres inquired. I handed him the recording device. "She confessed to everything. Blackmail, extortion, obstruction of justice. Even admitted her brother killed David Chun." Torres grinned, the first genuine smile I had witnessed from him. 15 years I've been anticipating this moment. 2 hours later, Adrian Morrison was apprehended at her law office as she attempted to escape through the parking garage. The charges were extensive: extortion, tax evasion, money laundering, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and accessory after the fact to vehicular manslaughter. The story broke on the evening news, prominent attorney arrested in 15-year blackmail scheme. I drove directly to the hospital to inform Dad. He was propped up in bed, appearing more alert than he had in weeks. "It is over," I stated. Tears streamed down his cheeks. "What transpires now? Now you reveal the truth. Detective Torres desires your full statement about what you witnessed that night. The district attorney wishes to interview you about Morrison's threats, and Maria Chun wants to finally comprehend what occurred to her brother." Dad nodded slowly. "I am ready. I should have been ready 15 years ago." The next morning, Detective Torres arrived at Dad's hospital room with a video camera and a court reporter. For 4 hours, Dad narrated the entire story. Every detail he had suppressed, every threat Morrison had made, every sleepless night he had endured. "I acknowledge my actions were wrong," he said, his voice weak but steady. "I should have contacted the police immediately after witnessing the hit and run. I should have prioritized justice for David Chun above my own fears. But when I learned of Brian's accident, when I saw his car wrapped around that tree, I could think of nothing except attempting to save my son." Detective Torres leaned forward. "Mr. Patterson, you were a father who had just witnessed a horrific crime and then discovered your own child was dying. Your reaction was human, comprehensible. What Adrian Morrison did to you afterward was criminal. The media coverage was intense, but largely sympathetic. The narrative of a grieving father terrorized by a corrupt lawyer resonated with people across the nation. Editorial writers condemned Morrison's predatory conduct. Victim advocacy groups rallied in support of our family. But Morrison's defense team fought back fiercely. They held press conferences portraying Dad as a drunk driver attempting to evade responsibility. They leaked selected portions of his hospital records, highlighting his blood alcohol level from the night of the accident. Robert Patterson is a criminal who has been concealing himself behind his grief for 15 years, Morrison's lead attorney informed reporters. Now he is trying to shift blame to an innocent woman who has dedicated her life to assisting victims. The character assassination was brutal but predictable. What I had not anticipated was its impact on our community. Brian's friends' parents began avoiding us. Former neighbors crossed the street when they saw me approaching. The local paper published letters to the editor questioning Dad's version of events. "Let them speak," Maria Chin told me when I called her, frustrated and angry. "They do not comprehend what it is like to lose someone and then be terrorized for 15 years. They do not understand how predators operate." Maria had become our staunchest advocate. She gave interviews about her brother, about his service in Afghanistan, about the 15 years she had spent wondering what had happened to him. "David was a good man who deserved justice," she stated on the evening news. "If Robert Patterson had come forward immediately, my brother's killer would have been apprehended that night. But Robert was coerced into silence by a woman who profited from my brother's murder." The legal proceedings advanced more rapidly than anticipated. The federal tax evasion charges were irrefutable. Morrison had neglected to report over $1.4 million in income over 15 years. The money laundering charges were substantiated by a paper trail demonstrating how she had moved the blackmail payments through shell companies and offshore accounts. But the extortion charges necessitated the jury to believe Dad's testimony, and Morrison's lawyers relentlessly attacked his credibility. "Robert Patterson has been fabricating for 15 years, Morrison's attorney argued during opening statements. "He is an alcoholic who killed 3 children and spent 15 years constructing an elaborate fantasy to avoid responsibility." Rodriguez countered with a recording of Morrison's confession. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you do not have to accept Robert Patterson's account of what transpired. You can hear Adrian Morrison's own words, her own admission of culpability, her own description of 15 years of criminal extortion." The recording was devastating. Even with the defense's attempts to discredit it, Morrison's voice was distinct, her admissions unequivocal. She had confessed to blackmail, extortion, and concealing her brother's crime. But the most impactful moment arrived when Maria Chun testified about the effect of Morrison's crimes on her family. "For 15 years, I have lived with inquiries," she stated from the witness stand. "What happened to my brother? Why did someone abandon him to die on that street? Why did no one care enough to find his killer?" She looked directly at Morrison, who sat impassively at the defense table. "Now I know David's killer was shielded by his sister, who transformed my brother's murder into a revenue stream. She did not merely steal money from the Patterson family. She stole my family's right to justice." Dad's testimony spanned 2 days. He was in a wheelchair by then, connected to an oxygen tank. But his voice remained strong and clear as he recounted the events of that night. "I made grave errors," he said from the witness stand. "I should have contacted the police immediately after witnessing the hit and run. I should have placed David Chin's life above my own fears, but my mistakes do not excuse 15 years of extortion." He looked directly at Morrison. Adrienne Morrison did not simply steal my money. She stole my family's tranquility, my bond with my surviving son, my capacity to grieve appropriately for my child. She transformed my worst moment into her greatest opportunity. The cross-examination was brutal. Morrison's lawyers interrogated Dad about his drinking, his decision-making, his reliability as a witness. They implied he was fabricating the entire narrative to avoid prosecution for vehicular manslaughter. Is it not true, Mr. Patterson, that you killed your own son and are now attempting to blame an innocent woman? Dad's voice never wavered. No, my son was killed by Alex Morrison, who was fleeing a hit-and-run crime when he collided with Brian's car. His sister has been profiting from that crime ever since. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood and read the verdict, guilty on all counts. Morrison displayed no emotion as the verdicts were read, but I observed her hands trembling as the judge scheduled sentencing for the subsequent month. During the sentencing hearing, Rodriguez presented evidence of Morrison's opulent lifestyle, financed by our family's suffering. Photographs of her vacation homes, her expensive automobiles, her art collection, all acquired with ill-gotten gains. Adrienne Morrison did not merely commit extortion, Rodriguez informed the judge. She committed 15 years of psychological torment against a grieving family. She transformed their tragedy into her treasure. The judge sentenced Morrison to 15 years in federal prison and ordered her to pay restitution of $1.44 million, every penny she had stolen from our family, plus interest and penalties. Ms. Morrison, the judge stated before imposing sentence, you corrupted the practice of law and profited from murder. You showed no mercy to your victims, and this court will show no mercy to you. Alex Morrison had passed away in his care facility during the trial, never learning that his crime had finally been exposed. Some might term that mercy. Others might say he finally faced his own reckoning. The veteran community fully embraced our family after the verdict. They organized a memorial service for David Chun, attended by hundreds of people who had never known him, but who honored his service and mourned his loss. Dad insisted on speaking at the service despite his declining health. David Chun served his country with honor in Afghanistan. He said from his wheelchair, his voice amplified by a microphone. He survived war only to be killed by a coward on a city street. His death was compounded by 15 years of injustice, 15 years of his killer being shielded while his family suffered without answers. He looked out at the assembly of veterans, their families, and supporters. I failed David Chun that night by not contacting the police immediately. I failed his family by allowing fear to silence me for 15 years. But today, we can finally speak his name, honor his service, and ensure his sacrifice is remembered. The VFW named their homeless outreach program in David Chun's honor. Maria established a foundation to assist homeless veterans in finding housing and mental health services. She utilized the media attention from the trial to raise awareness about veteran homelessness and PTSD. David's death had to signify something, she told me at the memorial service. Now it does. Dad lived for 14 more months after the trial, long enough to witness the David Chun Memorial Fund reach $2 million in donations, long enough to cut the ribbon at the new David Chun Veterans Housing Complex, long enough to walk me down the aisle at my wedding. Well, roll me down the aisle while on oxygen. Long enough to meet his first grandchild, whom I named David Chun Patterson in honor of the man whose justice Dad had finally helped secure. I can depart with a clear conscience now, Dad told me the day before he passed. David Chun's family has answers. Morrison is incarcerated. The truth is finally liberated. He died peacefully in his sleep, holding a photograph of Brian and surrounded by family who at last understood the immense burden he had carried. I used Morrison's restitution money to expand the David Chun Memorial Fund and establish the Chun Patterson Legal Clinic, providing complimentary legal services to families dealing with wrongful death cases and victims of criminal extortion. The clinic is situated in a renovated building downtown, just 6 blocks from where David Chun was killed. His photograph hangs in the lobby along with images of Brian, Tommy Rodriguez, and Michael Kim, all victims of Alex Morrison's crimes. A plaque in the waiting room proclaims, "Justice delayed is not justice denied. Truth withheld does not become truth destroyed." Sometimes clients inquire why I chose to specialize in victim advocacy. I tell them about Brian, about Dad, about 15 years of buried truth and the predator who profited from our anguish. I tell them that secrets are akin to cancer. They proliferate in darkness and consume everything healthy around them. I often reflect on the night Brian died, on the impossible choices we make in moments of panic, on how one decision can haunt a family for generations, especially when predators sense vulnerability and move in for the kill. But mostly, I contemplate the courage it took for Dad to finally speak the truth about Maria Chin's grace in forgiving him, about Detective Torres's unwavering dedication to a case that tormented him for 15 years, and about the realization that sometimes, even after 15 years of injustice, the correct choice remains the correct choice. Adrienne Morrison is serving her sentence at a federal prison in Ohio. Her appeals have all been rejected. Her law license was permanently revoked. Her assets were seized to compensate our family and pay taxes to the government. She will be 74 upon her release, with no career, no money, and no legacy except the devastation she inflicted. I hope she spends every day of those 15 years contemplating David Chun and the family that never had the chance to say farewell. I hope she considers Brian, Tommy, and Michael, 3 boys who died because her brother was fleeing the scene of his crime. Most of all, I hope she comprehends that justice is not about flawlessness. It is about bravery, the courage to act rightly, even when it is difficult, even when it is costly, even when it is 15 years too late. As for me, I sleep more soundly now. No more secrets, no more falsehoods, no more illicit money changing hands in the shadows. Just the truth, finally set free, and the understanding that sometimes the most courageous act you can perform is to refuse to bear someone else's disgrace. The David Chin Patterson Legal Clinic has assisted over 200 families in obtaining justice for their loved ones. We have recovered millions in wrongful death settlements. We have seen corrupt officials incarcerated. We have given a voice to the voiceless. But our most significant accomplishment is simpler. We have demonstrated that truth, no matter how long it remains hidden, always finds a way to emerge. Even after 15 years, even when powerful individuals attempt to suppress it, even when the cost appears too high to bear, truth ultimately triumphs, because truth is the sole liberator.